LEC goodness. Let's do it, baby. Let's do some LEC goodness. We're doing more LEC reviews. We finally got to watch G2 last week, and we're getting back for G2. Now, for full disclosure, I wasn't very interested in reviewing this series before it happened. This was a series I wasn't that excited to watch. It's one with a lot of narrative. Obviously, G2 and Fnatic, right? Like, Caps left Fnatic. Fnatic went to the World Final, blah, blah, blah. All hype narrative. They did a really good job of telling that story for sure. But to be honest, because Promiscu was in and G2 were already guaranteed to be in final, you got a sub support who's played not that many games with the lineup, and there's been a lot of talk of problems when it comes to scrimming amount of times. And they've already guaranteed their spot. And if I learned anything from casting LPL, you just were assuming that it was going to be a fiesta, Like, you're like, well, there's nothing on the line for one team, a lot on the lineup for the other team. Yes, there's some rivalry there, but you're mostly going to be hiding strats, and Promiscu's playing. So I wasn't that, excited about this game on paper, but obviously it was a barn burner of a game that I think a lot of people have had a lot of different opinions on and taken a lot of different things on. And I know some people have VOD reviewed it and not enjoyed it. I know LS had some colorful words to call it, and other people have really enjoyed it. So I'm going to watch it closer than I did on the night, and hopefully we can take something away from it so we can look over it. We've talked about G2 recently already, but Fnatic also, to me, there's one really interesting stat I found on review. I hope this is clear enough for everyone to see. I can make it bigger, but we're at... All right, so hopefully this is clear for everyone to see. But the stat that I found most interesting when I was reviewing from this is... Okay, there's some updates here that LS enjoyed it. He had some less than kind words to say on stream. On the LSK stream, but I didn't watch his actual VOD review of it, so don't want to put words in his mouth. The most interesting stat I found was in comparing top laners, because Bwipo, like, this year has been, to me, kind of in more of a kind of SOAS position than he was previously. Like, if you look at he's definitely been struggling. He's had some better games recently, but the most interesting stat to me is that head and CS is 15-minute stat. That's the only stat that I noticed on GamesLegends.com, which is, by the way, what I have been recommending as the website you guys use for stats. Benji does a fantastic job on this website. It's really great, very thorough. Head and CS at 15 minutes, 22% for Bwipo. And he's definitely been put in some pretty challenging lanes, and I think he's put himself in some challenging lanes also. But I think it's pretty relevant that, if you think about how the laning phase is going for Bwipo, it's not going so well. Like, he's being pushed in and struggling in a lot of lanes. Interesting counterpoint is Wonder has the exact opposite. It's fun when stats come together. Look at this. We open up good old Wonder, and he is ahead 77.8% of the time. So Wander definitely has been set up around, and that was the fun question with G2, right? When they announced the roster, you're like, so who isn't getting all of the resources? And it seemed like Wander would be the most likely person to lose out, but while he's not necessarily getting draft resources, like, his champion is often taken pretty early in the draft. He doesn't always get 5th pick, counter pick by any means. He definitely has been performing at a really high level. I think Wander has just taken it up and up ever since he was on Splice till now. He's looked awesome. So definitely very different in how games have been playing around their solo lane, specifically in the first early part of the game. Now, Fnatic won't necessarily have high CS ahead numbers because, of course, they had a lot of losses as the season went on, but definitely at the start of the season, they were kind of just working out their stuff. I think they started off with kind of a weird meta read. I think it's kind of gone through the gamut of, like, Nemesis replacing Caps, and trying different styles of champion around him. Like, I wasn't a huge fan of the Cassidy draft they did, but that's a pick that he had a lot of success on in Mad Lions and things like that. And then they've been kind of reckless focused at times. Like, they're playing around things, but in their win streak, they've just played really solid League of Legends. Like, I feel like they've ignored a lot of their preconceived notions. It almost feels like a whole kind of section of time of practice and gameplay has been ignored, and they've gone back to fundamentals, and I think they've nailed it more often than not. This is obviously not the best game for how reliable they've played, but I think Fnatic have been able to find a style that works, and Broxah, to me, has been the one who seems the most... Like, it almost feels like he was previously feeling like he needed to do something that wasn't working, and now has actually been able to take the lead in a lot of their gameplay decisions. And I see such a... To me, he's the big difference. If I look early season to late season, I see Broxah's level of performance leveling up many, many times over. So I've been very impressed with him, personally, has been my take there. For G2, they're playing with Promiscu, so obviously stats and styles aren't going to be as relevant here. Let's just load into the game, because I think this is one where the table setting, if Mickey X was playing, I think would be very specific about contested picks. Like, if we look at contested champions, it's also worth noting that there's been a big shift, so kind of the Urgot Scion days are a little bit behind. Buppo, for example, Wander's still playing Carry of the Week. A lot of one-offs for G2 for sure, and a decent amount for Fnatic as well, as they've both been trying to find their way forward. We knew that Karthus would be pretty contested here, and I must admit, I wasn't really thinking it would be a Buppo pick. I thought he would be much more about trying to control the pace of the game, whereas Karthus kind of rides along around his lanes. But let's see how it plays out. G2 versus Fnatic. Let's do it. Taking out lots of power laners from Fnatic's perspective makes sense. They're on the blue side, so they're going to have to blind a lane, and they don't want to necessarily allow G2 to blind a winning lane and then get double counter pick elsewhere. So that part makes sense. Double support ban is kind of strange, right? Like, it's kind of interesting to see double support ban against Hylissang. Obviously has had a very good season. Has made some great plays recently. I wish the Pyke was still around, but it's not any longer. Lucian first pick is starting to fall away in other regions. Purely because unable to take down strong front lines. But it's with Braum and Galio bans, so the chance of there being an ultra strong frontline support, it feels like more like Tahm Kench is kind of the best available at this point, apart from other scenarios. And I'm really loving Red Side Rise. I think Red Side Rise and Blue Side Rise, just in general, Rise is feeling really, really strong right now, because while Lissandra's banned here, does well in the Lissandra matchup, can do well on top lane with Snowball, but also farm out a lot of matchups, and mid lane also is pretty reliable. So I think Rise right now is among the more underrated first round drafts, because a lot of top laners who are carry top laners that force you into a weird spot in terms of champ select, Rise actually beats. For example, he does very well against Vladimir, for example. Yeah, in Europe, obviously going to be less relevant. We see a bit less Vlad there. But Rise blocks a lot of champs in top and has some good matchups mid, and then doesn't really get pounded that often, Like, maybe you can get turret dive top, but in mid lane, the fallback in mid lane is pretty good usually. So I'm a pretty big fan of Rise in general. And Alistar is just really high priority in LEC. I didn't even think of him when I was talking about the Tahm Kench after the Braum Galio, because we see less of him in Korea, but Alistar's laning phase, it can be exposed. I don't think Lucian Rakan is the lane to do that, but backline access, Rakan, mostly for power, I think, and it's because Hylissang obviously defaults to engage support as a go-to. And then now you're wondering, do we know G2 solo lanes or do we not? G2 Europe has had the most of the top lane Jarvan. Like, it's much more rare in other regions. It's usually jungle when you do see it. And when you see a Renekton coverage ban, you're like, okay, trying to find some breathing room for the Jarvan, because Renekton does very well against Jarvan. He gets stunned out of his EQ pretty often, then you just die. And if you don't EQ at the right time, you might also die. So Could still be, obviously, Jarvan jungle, but there's a lot of different ways to approach these things, I think, here. And actually get the Aatrox ban, which is another champion that can scrap against Jarvan very well. Jarvan is kind of good at losing gracefully. Like, I like him against ranged opponents. You just spam E or spam Q as necessary. But you see it here. Double AD ban for coverage ban for the Lucian. So at this point, G2 is looking for bot lane carry and also jungle or top flex. So who would the AD carry be here if you... I guess Vayne would be a consideration for Perks, but it doesn't seem to be in his wheelhouse that much. I think Vayne also really struggles against Karthus and Rakan, so even though that's been like a recent trend pick, I don't think you go the Vayne here. Tristana is fine. Doesn't do well against Lucian, but a lot of the first rounds taken. Ezreal is obviously if you just want to poke it out. And the enemy's pretty squishy, so this is a really good spot for Ezreal more often than not. But he goes Cassio, and that's a surprise, right? Cassio priority has been very low in other regions recently. I feel like a lot of teams have had pretty poor macro on Cassio, and a lot of teams are moving away from awesome dudes / mage bot laners because, you know, you can just see the fact that they don't have enough experience with the champ. Like this, honestly, a lot of games have been kind of like ruined in my eyes because we've seen Cassio bot take Luden's Echo for the lane and then go to Baron and like burn all your mana on Baron and then try to turn and be So it went for a 1-item power spike Cassio build and then didn't have mana and kind of ruined it. So it's Perks, which is relevant, right? Because obviously he knows Cassio well as a champion. Now as the enemy team, you pretty much assume it's Ryze top, almost certainly. You again, it could be Cassio mid, but it's kind of a weird time to blind Cassio. So, like, this is a meta where you just don't blind Cassio. So, Aurelia and GP are kind of the hovers here, which give them flexible options in terms of lane assignment, and they could take double AD, triple AD because they have Karthus jungle. But you know GP is top, right? Like, GP's going top. Like, he's not going mid. So, you have GP top, and GP loses to Ryze pretty hard. Like, Ryze can itemize to double down on winning lane, like getting Relinomicon, a second item, which has been standard at different times. But it does do something really well. GP blind helps you play smash bot lane. And when I look at this Fnatic comp, I say Karthus ult, GP ult, neither of them, both of them can be like farming under their turret or like Gromp respectively. And then Rakan goes in, you get a kill. Or Aurelia roams bot lane, you get a kill. So this is a, you know, 1-item spiking lane bully Lucian with Rakan engage, Aurelia roam, and double globals doing damage. So you're going this GP to help bot lane win harder. However, there's very little payoff as the game goes on if it becomes a 1-3-1. And G2 games almost always become a 1-3-1. They're very good at playing 1-3-1. So you assume it's going to be a 1-3-1 champ. And I already know this, of course, because I watched the game. We get the Zed from Caps. It's Zed into Aurelia, which, again, I don't have a full opinion on the matchup. A lot of Aurelia matchups started moving away from her when, specifically, she lost the ability to reduce magic damage on the W. And Zed doesn't do as much magic damage outside the passive, so the W value being reduced in other cases isn't as relevant here. And you could see Zed, this feels like a skill matchup, but you can be very punishing to Aurelia early levels. You can push Aurelia before she gets, say, a Tiamat, which you definitely want for mid lane. Yeah, I don't really have a full opinion on this pick. Like, it seems like a pick that could be fine from the Zed perspective, but I actually don't hate Aurelia in this matchup, and Aurelia can contend with Zed in the side lane, and I feel like if you build Sterix, Triforce, you know, like, it feels like Aurelia should be fine here. So while it's super hype and it does double down on 1-3-1, like, it was definitely one of those Zed picks where you're like, okay, you could play Zed here. And then Zed against Karthus in terms of a team fight, like you end up getting just in weird spots where you take bonus damage. Like it's just kind of a peculiar time for Zed. But also, again, you have to remember the stakes here for G2 are almost nil. A small amount of, a small amount of pride. But apart from that, not much else. You think, all right, we have magic damage bot and magic damage top. You could have taken Cassio into Aurelia, so you didn't have to go Zed at this point. So you can say damage profile. And all right, you don't have that much Yasuo synergy. You don't want to be fighting on top of Cannon Barrage and Defile, so Yasuo doesn't feel that great. But yeah, there's many different ways they could have gone on the draft. They left themselves the flexibilities and then ended here. And where they end, I'm not a huge fan of. But this game isn't really so much about that, as we know, going on with this game. I like the Fnatic's little play here. They push up. They camp this brush. You have some nice ways to push up here. So Hylissang gets there, I believe, as Perks walks down. So he's able to know that no ward has been placed. Reckless can E over the wall, and you can definitely E over the wall, and you can double E here. So you could start E also, the Battle Dance on Rakan, and get over this wall unspotted. There's a chance he could be there. There's no reason for Perks to face check, but I like the little patrolling of that particular area. Like, it gives you something. And I like this, as this happens, and you're like, alright, well, no ward being used bot lane, no problem there. If you watch the mini-map during this play, they just late invade top side. They're confident there's no ward down. They're right on that, and Jankos just spots them on the kind of corner tether. And it's in a really weird spot, because now you're Jarvan, who wants to hit a single target camp. You got Machete, so you're going to have no chance to go for Talisman. Like, you very rarely get late invaded by GP Karthus, right? GP Karthus is like, as I say it out loud, I'm like, oh, I don't know about this. Like, that's really bad level 1. But it allows Broxa to potentially have like a god tier clear, right? Because you can take 2 camps and then full clear blue side to bot side. But you might end up just thinking too many next level about respawns, depending on what happens there. Takes Scuttle. He expects that to be in vision. You expect Akarthus to pot the blue buff, because even with Talisman and sitting in the river, you're not going to have unlimited mana. So Jarvan is like now in a weird spot where he doesn't have lane priority in mid or bot, and he doesn't have any camps to kill because only Krugs is online. So you're in a really tricky spot now, I feel, the Jarvan. That's why he recalls. He's like, I can't just go into their jungle and take Raptors. I'm not good enough at taking Raptors. I might die doing Raptors with Machete. Krugs is not the easiest. I don't know what the status of the red is. Like, this is the sort of game where it feels like Karthus got a massive lead from the late invade, and it was a creative one. Could have all been solved by Wanda putting down his ward, but felt like that might have been used already for an earlier ward. I didn't track down if and when he added the ward, but interesting there. It gets Karthus a really, really nice path because he has so many camps up. It's always fun to see how things like these grand entrances hit. This is a really nice grand entrance timing. This is the sort of thing that should never happen with an experienced duo, because Promiscu leaves now as Hylissang goes into the brush, right? Promiscu's left, Hylissang's entering the brush. And then Perks moves forward. Like, that's just a straight up laning mistake. So, I know some people have a lot of opinions about whether Mickey X the leader of that lane, or Perks, or like the burden of knowledge, is it shared, is it not? But like, that's a really poor walk up there with no synergy with what his support is doing. And that's, again, I see that after I've already, seen the draft, and I'm like, this seems to be fitting my inner narrative of Caps is getting chunked out of mid lane, wasn't sure about the Zed pick. Jankos has to back away. Promiscu and Perks have already had one area where there's like super lack of synergy. Like, it was feeling like this was going to be one of those games, right? And I think, to my credit, the first 25 minutes, I think Fnatic played this game really, really well. Like, so far, the late invade was a surprising one that, you know, in a different world doesn't work, but I think they never lose anything from it. And they gain, in this case, a lot from it. Like, we pause and we're like, all right, Karthus up a lot of jungle camps, and Jankos got no ganks off. So, really, really nice start coming through on the side of Fnatic. Where the game is going, because I think a lot of people have like talked about scaling. Like, I always like to talk about scaling pretty early in a game. And I look at this and I'm like, Ryze outscales both side, definitely GP, but potentially both side laners here with certain item timings. So Ryze is like the god scaling champion on this side. If Caps gets going, there's a chance he has kill pressure on both, but I was pretty down on the Zed pick. You think about how Reckless has to play out fights, and the enemy has, you know, Alistar, which Lucian can do no damage to. Jarvan, Jankos, depending on build, is also a person who can get Reckless out of there. So even though it's AD carry versus no AD carry, and you almost want to give the advantage to AD carry, the amount of combos that Perks opens up on the Cassio, and the fact that Cassio does almost as much damage as a Lucian late game, like, you feel like G2 has this by a bit if Caps has a role on Zed. If Zed does nothing, you just assume the balance is off and things will fall apart. So I always feel bad betting against AD carry versus no AD carry and Karthus jungle, but like, I think this is pretty good scaling for G2, but like not by an outright domination. And then every lane is doing pretty damn well for them. I love the 4 longswords buy, by the way. Just feels so alpha when you buy 4 longswords as Caps. But bot lane's done, right? Like, ever since earlier where Perks had to flash, where he misplayed around the Ignite play, he's had no pressure. Mid lane's doing fine. Top lane's already struggling a lot, but it's Karthus who is power farming the threat of a Jarvan, and you chose GP into Ryze. So what you're much more interested in is, how does Bwipo use what he does have in order to influence the map? Because he should be using Cannon Barrage bot lane to make big plays. Speaking of big plays bot lane, really nice play coming in here from G2. Reminds me of some of the Tarzan dives. Let's see the information. No information to the enemy. No control of this area. Control ward down. They can roam through. You know, the red ping comes in shallow as Rakan goes in. Plays this pretty much perfectly. Heads butts out Broxa. Promiscu has flash, but flash doesn't do anything in this case. You need a turret play as well. And again, I literally thought the game is over. Really nice play by Fnatic. Sorry, sometimes I get my head mixed up, but it's a really nice play by Fnatic. Like, it was really nice turret dive, well coordinated. G2 didn't have vision around the river. Fnatic played that really cleanly. And again, this was the sinking thing. I was like, okay, well, we called it match of the century, and then the Zed doesn't really do anything. The bot lane is epically far behind and have shown moments of no synergy. And is it enough that Ryze is massive topside? Just watching how this solo kill happens. Ryze just walks behind Bwipo and kills him. So that's so weird. He has no jungle on that side or anything like that. I guess he's at some point trying to trade kill for the Karthus, and that part comes true. Lane assignment there is really weird. The further all in makes sense. So the start of the play doesn't, but the further all in makes sense because of the Karthus. Again, this is the dive, and it was very relevant when they toggled vision that there was no vision at all on the bottom side there for G2. Fnatic was able to get that dive, and they were never spotted, and it was classic clean 2-0. It plays into our original analysis that Fnatic were just playing the early game really well in this particular game. Yeah, we're just looking at this play. I'm going to turn the casting down a little. Trying to get the audio as quiet as possible. But he gets taken down. He goes down there. It's 37 CS disadvantage for Cassio, who has no combat items. He has mana and health, like has nothing. And Ryze should just GP should just be able to ult bot lane a million times. So the objective here for G2 is to find a way. Like, honestly, Jankos' job at this point, his primary job, if you go back, thankfully I'm able to do that. It sounds weird, but Rise is going to dumpster GP in the 1v1. All you need to do to stop this game from getting to a worse spot is to get control wards and control on river. Now, I'm not saying that's an easy thing to do, but, you know, like as Jankos, your job here should be find a way to control ward this area. Like the fact that he comes back with no control ward, he has a full Cinderhulk buy. This is what he does, right? Cinderhulk is a scaling health item that helps you clear a little bit. It helps you turret dive because you have more health, but you're not turret diving anyone. You're on the defensive. Like this buy has to include a control ward. And it doesn't because it's exact Cinderhulk gold. I think you have to find a way to fit it in because every time you see this, like this is already bot lane is done. Like Nemesis leaves, like what can bot lane do? Like Perks and Promiscu have their flashes back up, but they're 42 CS down. And they have no vision of the enemy exact positioning for now. Now, we know they have some shallow wards here that will spot, but you need control wards in ways to slow down roams like this. This control ward comes down, like, and then Perks and Promiscu are done. And Jarvan can only just walk down and watch turret plates fall down, even with the Cinderhulk. Like, the Cinderhulk doesn't do anything here. But an earlier reset where you're able to fight for vision control around River, I think, needs to be much more important here. Because otherwise, every time Nemesis ducks down, Perks and Promiscu lose a minion wave. They can't afford to lose. Like, they're so far behind at this point. Yeah, he keeps the refillable. Maybe, I don't know what... The gold's there. It's not that different, right? You could wait for 10 gold. But I think you just... The problem is, like, let's actually, like, examine this further. So we're going back. Like, this is where Jankos is chased out of his jungle. He's clearly sitting on some gold. We're going to watch a replay. Let's look at the timestamp here, 8:16. So, the back for the jungle item comes at 9:05. So that's 50 seconds of time to farm up the Cinderhulk here. You could have recalled 40 seconds earlier and found just some vision, you know, and just parked yourself bot side, because otherwise every time Nemesis leaves lane, even with some spotting wards, like Perks and Promiscu are so worried about, you know, losing further minions at this point. Like, you're so far behind that Perks getting, you know, 8 CS a minute by 20 minutes, like, is way more important than your Cinderhulk. So, yeah, I'm not a big fan of the Cinderhulk buy here and the fact that they couldn't fight for vision earlier, because a lot of these plays are harder to happen if you bought 2 control wards and then just came down, put down 1, it got cleared, you throw your flag over. Like, Jankos is not going to be able to gank GP any better than Ryze is already dominating him. Going mid lane is not going to work either. So backing to allow bot lane to farm should be the primary objective of G2 at that point. Oh, I lost audio. Feels bad. Alright. Anyway, it's just my analysis in that play. I'm happy that he went Cinderhulk. I think Ryze, Cassio, Zed should be enough damage, and you need a front line against Reckless. So Jankos' role in this game is to run in onto Reckless and stop Reckless from doing damage. And I think that's very realistic for a Cinderhulk Jarvan, so I'm fine with that. Cap's looking for his first roam, walks onto a control ward, and thus Bwipo clears up. So, you know, Bwipo's been able to stabilize this lane and farm out where he can. He doesn't want to use his GP ult defensively because he wants to use it to help bot lane win even harder, but bot lane's so far ahead that I think it's fine, right? Like, you're not so worried about the primary objective in that case. He's picked GP mostly to hit other lanes. This is the second time he's like really weirdly overextended. I guess he's just saying, I need to push this minion wave in, otherwise what am I even doing in my life? And it's as G2's on a roam, but doesn't get caught, so you know, it's overall mostly fine. Starting to see the power of Fnatic here. It's a really nice catch again from Hillsong. Hillsong's been awesome this game in terms of his roam timings. Like, he's making the Rakan look like its old self. They get the pick here. That's what Karthus provides from downtown. They don't have the GP ult downtown. This released pressure from bot lane, but Perk's out of mana, so he's going to have to recall. GP ult's down, Karthus ult's down in terms of bot lane play, but just like we talked about with Team Liquid, like we're seeing Fnatic play out this early game really, really nicely. We're seeing a lot of synergy problems with G2, like the earlier laning problem, where there seemed to be a complete disconnect between Perks and Promiscu was a big problem for why the laning phase started. His roams feel a little bit behind the 8 ball, even if sometimes he's the first person to leave. Like, this is the reality of having a sub support in. That's, again, why I assumed very little would come out of this game that was meaningful, because this felt, at this point, like the sort of game where, is this even a VOD you talk about when you're preparing for G2 Fnatic, if that's, say, the LEC final? Like, at this point, the answer was probably not. Caps is having a bit of solo queue fun, just looking for picks on people. Diane, you got 0-2Z. You got a 40 CS down bot lane. Like, yes, GP's behind, but GP was picked to ult people. So, like, this is where, like, it being over at 25 minutes was really heavily expected. Like, I think Fnatic have played this game really well. Wonder has done a solo shift up top. Like, I think everything he's done has been very strong. I think he chose his moments well. And we know that's how this game goes on. This is a big Wonder game for him to really pop off in a big way. And it's like, Caps is the right person to take that side lane, but I think you have to play more respectful here. So it's kind of peculiar. The vision patterns are off because you have a different support. You only have one lane with any pressure, and you have Caps trying to subvert lanes because he can't really enter lane against Irelia. So that's why he makes this play in the mid lane. Like, Bwipo only has Phage, and he can't get a kill on him, which is a pretty big problem, right? And then the Karthus ultimate, he gets such big value. Caps would have finished his recall if not for Bwipo Broxah looking for the kill in the mid lane, and they get a further kill. Like, I'll be honest, chat, I thought the game was over here. I thought this was it. I was like, okay. Game of the century, match of the century. Like, Fnatic are so far ahead. Like, you're looking at gold leads here. Yes, GP is way behind Wonder. But you get a Baron, and Wonder's side push doesn't matter. He can't push against Baron. In fact, you get a Baron, and G2 can't do anything. That's why the scaling point is always so caveated when I was making it. It's like, yes, there's outscale, but like, one Baron, it's GG, right? Like, Cassia, Rise, Zed can't do anything to Baron. GP ult allows you to win so hard where GP isn't. You can go second item Sterix here and be pretty farmed. And then the jungler's 1900 head and huge scaling damage jungler. The Irelia is 1500 gold ahead. And we already said, yeah, we kind of like it in the 1v1 and in the matchup. The 80 carry is 2300 gold ahead and hits 2 items hard. So we're going to have to, as a team, you know, as team VOD review of the century, work out where Fnatic is unable to wield their power. Just like we criticize Vitality for having huge spikes and getting them earlier than possible and then making bad decisions, we're going to have to understand, because I really thought this was donezo, guys. I really thought that Fnatic had just kind of cleanly won this game. Yeah, I mean, Bwipo sidesteps well here, but the fact that you couldn't get this kill is sad. And then Perks goes down. Bwipo, sorry, I keep thinking Bwipo. Brox is focusing on the kill there. It doesn't happen. And then even Nemesis gets the bonus kill. Like, this feels like the game is super GG. And now you're about getting the last easy objective, which is you send your duo lane top lane. You want to take the last outer turret. This is, of course, going to give you plenty of Baron control. You're so happy to trade this. Like, you never feel great about Wonder finding advantages, but they've invested their Jarvan bot side. Your GP is getting farm mid lane, and you're trading turrets that gets you 3 outers. So you're feeling really strong right now. Then just chasing for further things. Unlike the turret dive that Vitality did around this area, Fnatic just taken in a turret. Remember this in a turret compared to the inner turret that TL were playing around in our first VOD review of the night. This VOD review, this top lane turret gets you Baron control, whereas the inner turret bot is kind of like a gold turret. Like you take it down, it doesn't really change anything apart from some more vision around Drake. So making the map so long topside, actually killing this turret, means that you should always control red side jungle as Fnatic. The only assignment G2 has that doesn't suck for them is where Wunder is, and Wunder's bot. And you're just like, well, it should never matter that he's almost Flame Horizoning at 17 minutes. He's bought double Dark Seal, he's got a lot of early powers, Sorcerer's Shoes. Again, he is a raid boss already, but you either rotate around him or you do everything elsewhere. It's kind of the Nasus thing of, do you just gank Nasus a million times, or do you take every objective while he's stacking up and end the game before he has 800 stacks? And they just decide to play in other areas. Some shorts the ultimate and grand entrance there. Whoopsie. So it's 18 minutes, so you can't play a Baron game, and G2 have reinvaded for red side control, but you don't care about those millions of wards. There's 7 wards there. You don't really care for G2 because you have no reason to go there for the next 2 minutes, and by then the trinket wards will have worn off, and that's the time that you start invading it as Fnatic and making the game around Baron. Now, because it's GP top, your Baron ability to tank Baron and turn can't be like Team Liquid's or FlyQuest. FlyQuest was big in that game, you'll remember. Team Liquid's wasn't great, but FlyQuest was really strong, so that's what I'm referring to. In this particular game, G2, Fnatic actually have a pretty hard time tanking Baron. They have a lot of Baron damage, but that turn from Baron, they'll be pretty damn squishy, and it's, you know, Broxelf is nothing on a Baron turn because you can't just ult as Requiem because you're just tanking Baron when you do it. GP ult is a bit easier to get away from, and you don't have anything other than Rakan to punish on a Baron turn. So your Baron turn here is not God tier. Your Baron damage is good, but you can't tank it, so you kind of need that vision advantage and to set up a scenario where, say, Nemesis is in bot lane with kill pressure on caps while you're doing Baron as a 4-man unit. To me, that's what it looks like when you actually get the Baron. Otherwise, it can be pretty tricky. They're just rolling up and trying to get as much gold onto their coffers as possible, because look at where we're at in terms of item breakpoints. GP's got nothing. Wunder's got a lot, but no finish items. But still, you can tell Wunder's in a big advantage, right? But 2-item Broxa, including a Merlin Omicron 10-stack Dark Seal, compared to Cinderhulk and just a bit of resist. Like, Jankos has nothing. 2 finished lethality items is, you know, cheap power in the early game, and you can kill GP really fast. You can probably kill Karthus and Rakan, but you know, it's not the point you wanted. You want another Dirk and Boots 2 at this point, but because you're 0-3-0, you can't have that. Perks has nothing. Like, Perks is basically naked. Like, no items on this person. With just Archangel stacking up, like, it's going to take a long time for that to mean anything. So you got Zeke's Convergence advantage, 2-item Lucian, strongest power spike for that champion. Tiamat and Triforce, very strong power spike for Irelia. Like, everyone's ahead of schedule and GP's behind, but can ult. Like, you are so strong as Fnatic. Whatever you want should be yours, especially if you can keep Wunder away from it. And then Bwipo should just pick up farm, because, like, why even bother sending members to his lane? And then you just go as a 4 somewhere else and get things. So we're looking for Fnatic to smash and grab. And I imagine this is where the game starts to stall out, because I did miss the 25 to 35 minute phase of this game, to be honest. I decided to get food instead. I was like, oh, this game's over. It was not. Narrator, it was not. It makes the point about G2's Baron speed. They have a tank Jarvan, so they can definitely have him on it. And they definitely have more trade tanking options, so there is a chance for G2 to start, but they can't burn it quickly because there's no items onto perks. So G2 have been able to reclaim their red side jungle, so no longer do they have to be super scared around Like, this is not a game state at 20 minutes. Like, it's 5,000 plus gold lead, right? You would assume this would be a game where G2 have to, like, play Gragas bowling. And if you guys are wondering what Gragas bowling means, it means the jungler, who's in this example AP Gragas, but here we have a Jarvan, just sits behind the pit around the banana brush there and just chucks his flag in and is like, they're not doing Baron, guys. They're not doing Baron. That's his only thing he does in the game. He's basically like Princess Leia slave around the Baron. Like, that's what we're talking about in this case. But they've actually been able to take over topside control with 3 control wards on the entrances. So they're pretty confident they're not going to be flanked. And the enemy doesn't really have a flank comp. Like, it's GP, Karthus. Aurelia and Rakan could flank you, but they're not as worried about that. Aurelia's mid lane. So they've actually been able to defend the red side jungle better than you would think with how far behind they are. And the fact that Fnatic, it's like, what do you kill Fnatic? It's like, well, Mountain Drake's free. We've taken all the other easy objectives. We even took an inner turret in the top lane. So Fnatic should be able to take whatever they want, but they actually do have to fight for this vision here. So good job, G2. Repelling vision, you wouldn't think the members were strong enough to do so, but they were able to because Fnatic were committing so hard to the bot side. Fnatic start to push in. And then now it's, it should be a Baron game. Pick around Baron, deep ward, start Baron. Fnatic start the Baron. Beautiful. Exactly what you want to do. As this is happening, we get the toggle of vision. Holy crap, they know nothing. G2 know nothing. At all. Nothing. Could it be scarier at 21 minutes than all the damage items that are already done on the side of Fnatic and this vision graph? Like this is just the worst. Like, where do you check? Like, Jankos has also used his flag notice next to Promise Q. Like, he can't even flag check the first brush entrance, let alone the Baron. Like, this is just the worst. And you have less items on almost everyone, and Cassio can't be there. What do they know about Cassio? Where's the last ward Cassio was on? Cassio was full. Okay, so it's unexpected to Fnatic that Cassio backed. That's an important thing to know. Ryze knows nothing. So Zed can't be there for about... How long does it take Zed to get there? He pops Youmu's, he goes over one wall. I guess if you went over a wall and flashed and you went through quite a lot of scary visions. Remember, you have no vision in the top left here. You could be there, Zed, in 7 seconds. But they know nothing as G2. This is so scary. They put down a control ward. They're like, all right, we get toward it. Baron's at 2,200 at this point. I need to know something that I don't know the answer to. I'm going to watch the minimap. So, I don't think they ever swept this brush. The reason why I say that is, I was watching Sweeper, it was not used by Rakan. If Rakan was in the brush that you see, just the banana brush, just the next brush that G2 would love to have vision of, right? The only brush that's present on the screen. If Rakan is in that brush, you finish the Baron. I think you burn it because you had vision of them throwing a flag in. You know Jankos has flash, but Rakan is the only member of Fnatic that can interrupt, and yet Fnatic is behind the pit. So at the end of the day, they do it a different way. They still get the Baron though. I think this is a good Baron take by Fnatic. I feel like it could have been a little bit safer, but Jankos, did he get in the pit? Let's find out. They keep burning it. Yeah, I mean, look, they play it almost perfectly, right? They still get the pass-through charm. There's no way for Jankos to get in there. I think it's still really well played. When it comes to the Baron take, you take the Baron. Well played by Fnatic again. Now they got Baron, And now it's still amazing they didn't win the game from this Baron, because they should just get unbelievable advantages here. Wonder's been able to side push. He has Flame Horizon. He's super big. But remember, Bwipo just left. They're going to lose Inhibitor for this. Like, Fnatic are so far ahead at 22 minutes. It's 11-1. It's a huge gold lead. They played the Baron pretty well. I'm trying to tell if Jankos ever got in the pit when it could have actually been smited. Let's find out. The answer is yes. He gets in the pit. Rakan should have been in that pixel, in that banana brush that we were talking about, where you see one green ward unswept at the bottom side here. Jankos shouldn't get that close to it, so it's still a Baron call that should be refined. So good job, Twitch chat. He did confirm to get in the pit. I thought he was charmed and didn't get in, but you're correct on that one. Reckless plays that really well, dodging away the Perks' ultimate. They get the inhibitor. You know, as Fnatic, you think the game's going to end around here and then be like, oh, okay. You know, no harm, no foul. We made our Baron call could have been better, but we won the game. But that's just not how this one goes. Lane assignments are good here. They're playing 4-1 with GP ult soon to be up. Pushing around bot side. Their siege isn't great, but they have Barons, so they get another gold, another turret. GP ult will be up soon. You can use that for zoning. Now, minion wave actually gets cleared surprisingly fast there. I guess they just have enough AoE wave clear to throw in. But it does feel like Baron buff should be the closer here. Bwipo roams down. I guess it's because he feels like he can't contend with Zed in a 1v1. He's probably right. It was kind of weird to see him go... I guess Phantom Dancer was his choice here. I think Sterix gives you a bit more along the way, but Phantom Dancer gives you more threat. I think it's kind of a peculiar choice as an item in this case. But he walks down, and you're right. Look, he probably gets popped by Caps. Let's be real. So it's fine to walk down. They GP ult to zone. That part's good. Hylissang's getting some turret shots in. I just see this play, and I assume it's going to be the game ender. Okay. I definitely missed something here, didn't I? So, I mean, Nemesis is pretty bold going in on this, but just like we kind of outlined with Sterix and W, like, Cap's not going to kill him. Not instantly, and it ends up being a 1-for-1. They chase for damage, and your eyes deceive you here because I'm pretty sure Realm Warp... Alright, they tried to Realm Warp out in order to dodge damage. Weren't able to. And that's a mechanic that I've been aware of, but I've never seen used in a pro game. But I know that's something that Wonder ends up doing multiple times this game. So I'm going to watch all of those Realm Warps to try to understand them. I don't think I've ever seen a pro game where Realm Warp actually worked in the Alpha Strike way, but we all knew that's how the ability worked. Just no one put 2 and 2 together. I guess because we just never had the Karthus meta in Korea. But yeah, that time he doesn't actually pop the damage on everyone. I was watching the health bars. That's clearly what he was trying. What happens if he gets it? They're probably still disengaging, right? They're probably not re-engaging if he gets it off there. So the timing's off, but... I mean, look, Fnatic got what they wanted. They got the second inhibitor. Now they can have GP, you know, continue to... They'll probably play 2 lanes at this point because GP doesn't have teleport. Speaking of teleport, nothing GP can do to stop that. Yeah, and you think about what the enemy has at this point. They have a really, really strong damage rise. This is not Righteous Glory Rylai's. This is I want to kill GP in the side lane. Like, Rise for sure murders GP in the side lane. Aurelia doesn't die, but gets out. You know, it doesn't kill either. I guess your issue is that Zed still has kill pressure on GP as well, so you've got 2 bad GP options. But I guess you group with GP. That's, you know, something you can do. The Lucian feels like hasn't got items in ages, but this should just be the tail of the tape taking down objectives. Like, second Baron should be a freebie for Fnatic in this game. G2 don't have the ability to push up. They have more vision in their red side jungle than you would have imagined. When was it placed? Long time ago? Yeah, it's placed then. So it's placed after the second inhibitor went down. So good job getting some vision topside from Jankos to stabilize that. Because Baron's spawning in a minute 50. So the play you want to make here, because you don't have teleport, is you can't play 3 lanes. You kind of try and push in. You can't slow push because you have a super minion, but you want to slow push bot side if you're Fnatic. Play mostly top side and mid, and then back off to Baron and threaten it after sweeping all the vision. This is very... How they get there is kind of strange. They get 3 control wards down. They don't sweep out the Raptor bush. I guess doesn't matter. They don't feel strong enough to go in there. I think this is probably fine because they have left vision as they went. Vitality were guilty of not doing that. You know, and they're just trying to keep pressuring until Baron spawns, and then you can be pretty highly expected that there won't be Baron vision for the enemy. So they push up, whack them with their wallets, as we talked about. All right, let's talk about this. Let's lower the speed a bit here. Let's look at the map. Talk about the map state here. The map state is soon there's going to be a minion wave pushing into from the bot lane. It's going to take longer for mid lane. The next respawn should cut off the minions. But that's coming as well. So the map's working for them. They've left control wards along the way, so they have a lot of red side control. And you know, dive is on your mind because you're like, oh, we already got 2 inhibitors down and we're really far ahead in terms of gold. Now, they're probably less far ahead in effect than they would have thought at the time. It's 8,000 gold, but 8,000 is still 8,000. Reckless gets a nice chunk onto perks. Team comp-wise, when it comes to turret diving, I mean, they've got Rakan with flash up. Aurelia's flash is down, but Aurelia's obviously famously good at diving. And Reckless, as long as not tanking turret, I think everyone else, like, you're happy if Broxah, Hylissang, or Nemesis are tanking turret, because they should be able to play around that, and obviously if Karthus dies, he can do cute stuff with his ultimate. The enemy team, though, if you're diving into them, they've got Cassiopeia, who is very strong at punishing a dive into you. Wander and Jankos can definitely kill one person, and if Caps gets free target priority, who's to say what happens? So let's understand how this happens in pretty slow motion here. Promiscue's on a ward. They walk up. Really important thing that I didn't notice first time through. If you notice here, I'll go back again and show you. So Promiscue's on a ward and starts sweeping that. Watch what Caps does. He actually cuts the minion wave and kills all but 2 of them, which of course is going to be pretty relevant in this. Now, I need to go back and watch the main fight. Trying to understand how Reckless took... So Reckless, the first kill goes on, Jankos dies instantly, and then Reckless flashes into Petrifying Gaze. This is a hard Petrifying Gaze to see. You'll notice that, watch the how noisy this animation is. Watch for Petrifying Gaze. Like, you can understand how this happened. Because it's actually mid-channel. Look at how noisy this is, right? Because it's a blue particle, like a kind of clear particle for the Petrifying Gaze. And then the amount of noise means that it's lost during it. Let's watch when it's buffered. Alright, so actually, important note here. Grand Entrance doesn't hit perks, and he's able to ult behind it. He gets charmed, but they just don't see the Petrifying Gaze. If you think about it from Reckless' perspective, imagine you're playing as Lucian. So Lucian's cutting around. Instantly you know that one threat's dead. He's flashing to try to kill Wander. But it's so visually noisy, you can understand why he missed it. Like, Reckless for sure will kick himself for that, but that is a super visually noisy fight. Like, yes, if you're looking directly at Cassio's model, you can see Cassio ulting, but if you're focusing on closest target, I think you miss a lot in the visual noise there. Like, it feels really bad, obviously, right? I'm just trying to think of it from Lucian's perspective. That's my main interest in this. I think he just missed it. You know, I think he missed the Cassio ult. And it's obviously looks extra bad because it's while he flash and Bwipo dies for free because Caps gets a free target as the turret does all the work. But Caps clearing the minion wave and how visually noisy that was pretty huge. Wonder dodges Karthus ult here, doesn't he? Yep. Well, that was off screen, but Wonder was able to R through the ult there. You can tell because Ceres shield was used so long ago. Nicely done by Wonder. So he actually pulls it off this time. The one he was threatening before. That was sick. Yeah, really interesting there. Like, Fnatic are in such a big lead that it ends up being a huge throw, right? Because minion wave from bot lane hasn't hit the turret yet, so it hasn't come in. The minion wave from mid lane is quite a long way away, so this is actually a point where G2 can fight as 5 and the map is not drawing them away. And you think about the resting map state of 3 control wards around the Baron spawning soon, and you say, there are many other places Fnatic can fight that are lower risk than this. Now, is it categorically wrong to dive here? I would say no. Is it much more risky than almost every other scenario? I would say yes. So that's kind of the thing you're playing at when it comes to decision making. Caps clearing out the minion wave here, I think is pretty relevant, but because as things go on, and then as the fight goes on, Reckless dives in, Reckless dies. Like, so I'm watching the mini-map of what would happen if we were just jockeying for position around this area. And around now, if you were like waiting for the next minion wave to crash, you would be able to back away to a pretty unwarded Baron area and secure that. I guess if you want to be super safe, you can go to Ocean Drake. Perk's ult is the right time, but it's visual noisy, and I think he kind of almost high rolls. Like, it feels like a weird thing to say because obviously Petrifying Gaze doesn't have an RNG effect, but it's like Reckless's small mistake that looks huge mistake in hindsight, and kind of Perk's overperforms in that ult there, and it you know, it delays, man. It buys time for sure. Straight onto the Baron again. They know Cassio can't be there. She's out of mana. Why them to give up Baron? And now they have the Baron again. And now a lot of lane assignments are open to them at this point. They have TP coming up soon for Bwipo. They can just pressure through mid lane. And that's probably fine. They have no TPs, so they don't want to send someone bot lane, but you can notice the minion waves coming in around the same time. At this point, they don't have any eyes on Promiscue, which isn't ideal that the Alistar has a flank position. Perks has flash and ult available. Siege-wise, Fnatic do have some issues. And sometimes when you have so many advantages, it becomes harder to remember how to play out your comp. Like, I think the way you play this is that you play 2 lanes, top and mid, and you have no threat at all coming from the Promiscue spot there. Like, that's definitely something you scout between going from top and mid. In terms of lane assignments, you could play 4-1 with just Nemesis top lane as flashes up, and he's very, very fed Aurelia. You could send GP top. I think his flash is about to come up, but he doesn't really threaten anyone, whereas I think Aurelia has outplay potential on both side laners. And then, you know, Brox is just kind of occupying the Promiscue spot here, or Hylissang, whichever one you want, and threatening things with your own control warded brush. They have all the control wards in their inventory. Their control ward line isn't doing anything for them at this point. Let's see if they get there. But they're playing 1 lane, and I think playing 1 lane against G2 gives them too much option, because then threat ranges around Cassio being able to zone control. Ryze Rune Prison having threat range, Jankos' ultimate, in fact, takes out most of the defender's advantage you have around an inhibitor. I think there's better lane assignments here that are more guaranteed, and then you end up in a fight like this. So it ends up being a 0-for-0 when Fnatic have a 7,000 gold lead and most of their champions at their strongest point. There's death cap on Karthus. He has 3 items on Lucian compared to much more patchwork items outside of specifically Wander. The tanks are pretty tanky, but let's watch this one play again. A bit slower. Because remember G2, let's watch how much synergy there is between Fnatic and try to understand the call. They chase out Promiscu, that's a start. The barrel link clears out the minion wave, they start walking up. The grounded effect means that Reckless can't go right now, but he's waiting for the minion wave. Reckless comes up onto grounded and gets stunned. Not ideal, but you know, he's not under death threat at this scenario. Jankos is controlling a lot of space as Karthus ults, and I wonder if Karthus ulting this late, because like opening with Karthus ult, then pushing as the minion wave crashes, I think is fine. Instead, they kind of, like the Karthus ult channel is, let's watch for the timing. Like Broxah starts channeling it after already a hard engage comes through from Hylissang, which to me is a very weird kind of synergy issue, because then he's out of the fight for this whole time, right? He does nothing at the start. He's not zoning. Yes, he's got some threat behind him, but it almost feels to me like Hylissang and Broxah are on different pages. Like Hylissang chose that moment to go in, I assume because he saw someone he could hit with the quickness. Meanwhile, Broxah was like channeling his ultimate to try to zone. So I think it's a bit strange. And then there's some re-engage potential. Like Caps moves back. He has a shadow to go to. Here we go. This is smart. Watch how this plays out. Like Caps is not engaging on this. And then watch what happens. Wander snipes on the bot end a minion. Let's watch it. He snipes a minion, right? Which minion is it? I have to look at it closely. And it spreads onto Reckless, and that's when Caps goes in. Like, this is definitely a smart time to go in there. His attentiveness, definitely you can't say any criticisms of that. That was actually a really, really awesome time for him to go in. Because as the damage was confirmed on Wander's AoE, that he goes in, and there's 2 members that could instantly die there, Broxah and Reckless. So that was actually really nicely communicated, or just really heads up. Could also be really lucky, but I actually think that was communicated because it seemed intentional. Like, he did not need to go to that shadow. Like, it was actually super risky to go to that shadow with his flash down. But he sees the damage coming through and chooses his moment. So that's why it ends up being an even trade. So that was, to me, G2 overperforming. 7,000 gold behind. And Fnatic just being too stubborn. They didn't have to play one lane. They choose to play one lane, and it means that top lane doesn't matter. And the minion wave's too far bot lane. It's like, no, like Nemesis, like where did Nemesis health bar go? I wasn't following it. I think he just dived onto Aurelia, onto Ryze, right? Like Nemesis's whole health bar is wasting Wander's time, which in a vacuum is actually pretty good, right? Because Ryze not just instant killing somebody else. But he's out of the fight. They take this engage. It was really smart from Caps. On a different day, like if you had another Dirk item, or if you had like a bit more damage, like you get a double kill there, like almost accidentally, just because you chose the perfect time to re-engage as a 1-6-1 Zed. So it's Fnatic playing one lane, and they seem to really, really want to play one lane and not fight for jungle supremacy here. Like, you're scared of Jarvan, Ryze engage, Alistair engage. I get that, but like all the ults are back up. Like now you can't dive in as Aurelia. Most of that team is super short. So you're really scared of Perks, even though he should be just a non-factor. Like in a side lane, he's not doing much. But in a scenario like this where he's delaying, he can actually delay super hard. Wander just sits in control ward and obviously is super scary. Like you should never ever be able to repel Baron buff pushes with this team. This team has terrible wave clear. But that doesn't take into account playing one lane and just the enemy having like zoning ultimates like a Cassio that stop you from ever pushing up. Like, it's just insane. This Baron buff was 1,000 gold power play. I thought, like, I think 10 times out of 10, this Baron buff power play against this team should end the game. And it's got them no gold. They're fighting so hard to get anywhere. Alright, so finally get the inhibitor. They get 2 inhibitors. Kind of the minimum, right, that you're going to get from this play. They don't get bot lane inhibitor like we mentioned. So they do eventually brute force it, but it was a lot harder than it needed to be. And it's giving some time to the enemy. So that's kind of our takeaway. And then you've just taken everything on the map short of bot lane inhibitor. And there's no Baron to take, and there's no Drake to take. Big leads this early in the game. You feel so bad mountain spawning before Elder because it's another way to get G2 out of their base. And now G2 gets farm. It's just going to be farm for G2. Gold lead around 8,000. Closing the gold lead here, not an easy thing to do. So these are the map states where you're like, Fnatic should be punishing G2. But short of like starting a push down bot lane, there's not a lot you can do because all objectives are down. So they're just farming out items. Like, you always hate to see resets when you're the team like Fnatic that's controlled 30 minutes. But like, this is a kind of understandable reset, right? But it's one of those things where you're getting minions that could theoretically have been denied in a different game. It's impossible to deny anything because you've got 2 inhibitors down. But you don't have threat onto inhibitors, onto Nexus turrets. Siege on Fnatic is poor. Wave clear on G2 is poor. The siege out from Fnatic is better than the wave clear from G2 because at least they have an 80 carry. But 80 carry is under a lot of threat from Ryze, from Jarvan ult, from Zed flying in as well. So far they've been unable to leverage it. They finally pick up this minion wave bot lane, looking for that 3 inhibitors. Now the advantage of pressure plays like this from Fnatic's side is, yes, the glass half empty is like, damn it, I don't want G2 to have all that farm on the people that we denied and held down for so long. But the upside is you're seeing them farming, so you know they're not putting down vision. So the Baron buff fallback here is strong. Now, playing bot lane's not ideal. They dive on Wander, almost kill him. So they go super all in on Wander. I can go faster than this. I'm watching this space. They go super all in. Remember that Fnatic, when it comes to CC, after the Rakan, you know, Aurelia's fishing, Lucian has nothing, Karthus has a wall, Bubba has basically nothing. They can't really influence enemy positioning outside of just killing their health bar after you go in as Hylissang. Important to remember. Caps is controlling space on the side. I like how G2 is standing. This is really good positioning from G2 because you're never getting 2 carries with quickness or with the grand entrance. Caps and Promiscu best buddies, Perks and Yankos best buddies, and Wander, he's been on an island the whole game, wondering how they could possibly lose this game. So really good fanning out from G2. Never are there 2 threats to go for. Hylissang chooses 1. But awkwardly he chooses 1 in really hard terrain to follow up on. So he's gone in and used everything on Wander, who, as we know, is very, very tanky. So the moment the stopwatch comes off, like, Wander falls down super fast, but, you know, he presses his button. But then Yankos comes in, and then look at this predicament you're in if you're Fnatic. Nemesis flashes down, Hylissang's flashes down. Reckless doesn't have anyone he can auto attack, so he's using his ultimate on Yankos. I guess you should cancel it here. So you're doing damage on someone. They actually, because of the defender's advantage of being on the defensive team, get themselves into a really weird spot. And even things like the W from Cassiopeia can be big. Wait for that ability. Watch the replay. So he puts it down, and that's just a pretty standard place to put it because he's trying to peel. But as the Cataclysm comes down, you've got so many people here who can't position, and you can't kill Wander. So the Charm on the end does a little bit to interrupt Cassio spamming out damage, but Wonder's under no more threat. Nemesis is caught, and now the rest of Fnatic are kiting back because there's no more frontline for this team. Like, terrain can be oh so strong when defending, and Karthus going to the enemy sucks compared to the enemy coming to Karthus. But Wonder can come back full health here, right? Eventually the minions come in, top side, they get pulled, and it's 3 inhibitors, so they're still able to get it, you know? Like, even though that fight looked really good for G2. Like, you see what G2 can do, like, that's an example of the scaling we've been alluding to. But they still lose in the inhibitor, because the early game has gone so well. Someone's saying that I missed another Wonder dodge, let's find it. He did dodge it. Amusing. He wouldn't have actually died. I don't think. Can we agree that he wouldn't have died? Look at his health bar. That's the moment that it comes off. I think he lives here. I think it ends up being a bonus at the end of the day. But, yeah, he did actually pull it off. Because if you notice, he never actually drops in health. He's... Wait, does he? No, because he doesn't have any more overshields left, right? Like, yeah. The healing of the fountain is interrupted because he takes damage, but other than that, it's nothing. So, at the end of the day, nicely done. Question in the chat about how Karthus plays out this fight. Let's watch how Karthus plays out the fight. Like, Brox is in the Rumble Pit. He peels back. I think at this point he's peeling. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to peel for Reckless, so... It's so hard to have an identity as Karthus in a situation like that, so I got no problem with how Broxah played out at the end of the fight. You just kind of want to go for closest target who's near someone that, one of your allies, because you can't force them to chill in your Defile, so I think that's fine from his side. They get the 3 inhibitors. Like, Fnatic are really ambling. I think they misplayed how their lane assignments were in mid-top earlier, so now we're just getting to the point where somehow this became a almost 60,000 gold game when it just never should have, right? Like, I think that's the frustrations. Around 25 minutes, you were in a really good spot. And then G2 are just trying to make it about them. So how does it lead to this? G2 just abandons their base. They say, all right, minion waves aren't going to kill our base. Let's get the Baron now. While Nemesis is dead 5v4. That's the read on this one. Nice head by Pole from Promiscu. They're doing Baron here way quicker than you might imagine, with perks not actually damaging it. So Fnatic here are kind of boned, because Nemesis died. They got 3 inhibitors. They didn't expect G2 to walk up to Baron. GP being there or not being there doesn't really make a difference. And you see their problem, is they have a squishy jungler with no mobility and no flash, a engaged support whose engage abilities are on cooldown, and Reckless at full health but with no frontline. They can't walk past Perks, as you can see, right? Like, Perks is just zoning them here. Like, Perks is not burning the Baron. He's just standing on top of Baron. There's no way for them to move past there. So it's a really good Baron call from G2. It's probably one of those half and half moments where, like, I think it ended up way better than expected for G2, but I think they make the right read of, we're never going to get near this Baron ever again, so let's go for it. And it ends up being a great call. And then look at the base here. The base defense has to be incredibly heroic as Nemesis comes in for the further chases. When was the stun used by Nemesis? I'm watching to see if there's any world where he has stun back up. He doesn't. He's just going for kills. There's no way to stop Wonder from getting out there. This game was a game of inches. Like, it's so risky to go out of base in order to take a Baron there because you know 3 waves of super minions coming in. But given the full context, if they didn't go there, they would have lost Baron for sure. And they have just enough protection in the base with the fact that GP can't take Zed in a side lane that they can actually keep the inhibitors up. So it's the call to rush Baron and complete it, and Perk smartly not dumping damage into Baron, but looking to stop any of the squishies walking past him. Like, that Baron setup is way better than you could imagine for... We've been behind almost this entire game with a sub player in a game we don't have to win. Like, that ends up being a really good G2 Baron pickup here. And yet, you're looking at the mini-map and you're like, that's a whole lot of big blue dots. So, it was still full of risk, but... Like, G2 at this point in the game, where they've been dictated to the entire time, they're rolling the dice. Like, in the LCK, there'd be teams at this point who would have thought about just sitting back and wave clearing, you know? Like, oh, we got the ace, so like we got the one kill on Nemesis, but that just means we get to get super minions for longer. But very rarely does that help you win the game. The move from G2 could throw the game maybe more than 50% of the time. But also, you have a chance of winning, say, 25% of the time by getting a Baron and then things go your way. However, if you just stay in the base and just clear minions and wait for the enemy to get Baron and just roll up in 3 lanes, you just lose. Anyway, like, you just lose to Fnatic being able to play out 3 lanes with Baron buff the one time they actually try to do that and play 3 lanes. So I really do respect rolling the dice and actually trying to find a way to win the game. Like, that's what you need to do as G2. Like, you're trying to win. Like, we don't queue up to not win. So, any comments on Rise mechanics? Let's find the Rise mechanics. Yeah, Wonder takes down the Rakan. That part's normal. I love his understanding of damage here. Like, it's death cap Rise, but, you know, I've never imagined Rise doing damage in my games. His auto attacks are really swaggy here. Like, he's playing, like, he's been maxing damage, like, awesomely. Like, it's very hard for me to fully appreciate how much of a next level this is over another Rise player. Like, it reminds me of Nuguri, and he's a really great Rise player. Almost just straight up kills him with an auto there, as this all happens. In terms of resources that were available, could anyone have backdoored? Should Bwipo have gone to the base? He would have been able to TP on minions. He can't. Caps has ultimate, so he definitely... What's his items at this point? I think he's too weak to take Caps or ignore Caps and do damage, because like he has Phantom Dancer, which at level 16 is what, like a 500 HP overshield? But he has, like, no damage. Like, look at him. He has a Dirk and a bit of an IE. Like, I think if you TP in the back door here, I think you lose. Like, obviously, if Zed was chasing further, like, if you knew Zed was moving through mid lane and was revealed doing that, then yes, you would have found a way to backdoor. But watch the mini-map here and imagine Zed showing up. Let's think about when it would... Say, not Zed, GP showing up. GP shows up now. That's when GP shows up. Based on these cams being correctly synced up. Maybe you do win. Because when I'm watching the TP and I'm pressing spacebar the moment I see that GP's TP ends. How much damage do the minions do? Nah, I don't think Zed can. I don't think Gangplank can burst down the Nexus. So I'm gonna go with my original thought. I don't think there's any chance of Bwipo actually taking down the Nexus here. If they had gotten the Baron Fnatic, then yes, definitely. I think in that scenario, it's correct not to go there. This is a really clutch Baron take by G2. The fans going all for G2. I mean, it makes sense, right? You're spamming G2 right now because they made the great move, so that part makes sense. And now you're in that really awkward spot where, as Fnatic, you're like, oh shit, we have to find a way to win this game. You know, they've blown all their flashes. So is the enemy outside of Alistair. But now it's just, With Baron buff minions, you can actually keep inhibitors up because it takes a while for Fnatic to push through those minions, and you can't play 3 lanes as easily against Baron, so we get this moment where you're pushing in minions. Wait, how did this go straight back to Fnatic? That's pretty funny. I think the initial excitement wore off a bit there. Yeah, some people in chat talking about, think if GP would TP for backdoor, Ryze could TP sooner. GP TP to the base would punish Ryze for TPing out. It's so... I think also when you're in the head of Bwipo, like, yes, you want to be the, like, Phoenix and Ryze from, like, the ashes of your, like, kind of getting slammed double flame horizon, but I think it's realistic to not feel like you get it there, and I think you roll low at least 8 out of 10 times. Like, yes, there's a world, I can see it where it worked, but I just, yeah, I don't think that would have happened. What if GP cancelled Zed's recall? Let's think about that. I mean, this is like one of the most interesting what-if moments of the game, so I think it's fine to... Like, GP had already given up at this point and was looking for a TP play, and it's Zed trying to interrupt him. Then Zed backs off. Like, I'm watching the minimap here completely. So this is very much... GP is already, like, hard committed to coming to this fight, so I think... Like, he doesn't have eyes for trying to kite out the Zed there, so I think it's kind of a moot point. Like, he never at that point thought... Where did EXP come from? Perks, Caps, and Wonder 18, or Counterparts 17. Perks, Caps, and Wonder. It's from all the Baron buff minions pushing into the base. That's where you get the experience and gold catch up there. Was in the minion waves pushing in. That's how... Because if you remember all the moments in the game where they had 3 inhibitors down, and the super minions are pushing in, and there's nothing for G2 to farm. Like, they're taking some, like, under-leveled jungle camps, you know? Like... They're not getting anything there, whereas the super minion waves are crashing to G2. It's another thing that you get when you have super minions pushing in. You don't see it that often. Because remember, Perks was like, dicked this game. He was so far behind in terms of experience and gold. But if you get super minions pushing in for that long, you end up with a lot of golden experience. So that's how Perks, Caps... I mean, Wonder is obviously just because he was a side lane raid boss, but that's how the extra experience happened there. And now you just wish Elder had spawned at 35 minutes and that things weren't so struggle street at this point. Now G2 actually get to leave their base, as Medic is simply putting out there. And you're fighting for farm on Fnatic's side. Like, the amount of income difference there is post the super minions going down, spawning in all 3 lanes. G2 got way more farm than Fnatic could. You know, it feels like denying yourself, but obviously taking 3 inhibitors is so often just a win condition. Showing here the damage numbers done. Wonder. Well, Ryze picked himself into the matchup, and they didn't really use Cannon Barrage in the side lane, so we haven't been a big fan of the GP here. And to Bwipo's credit, he said in the post-game interview, like, hey, like, I wasn't happy with my performance. I don't think the pick worked. I don't think there was so many great things to pick here. I don't think he's wrong necessarily, but the Ryze matchup, I think, scarred him more than he expected. Like, this is 2 ultimates to get Alistar out and no damage onto the inhibitor. Like, they had to use 2 ultis just to get that chunk there. And they don't even get an inhibitor out of it. Fnatic have played 1 lane for so long this game. To me, that's the most stark thing. Like, I think macro-wise, they had to come up with more creative ways to play more than 1 lane. Like, they just can't walk up. Like, now Perks has level 18 full items. Like, you just can't walk up at this point. I didn't see the trade of ult here. Yeah, just Jankos just ults. Yeah, Wonder does so much damage just to flash away from Rune Prison threat. So Fnatic aren't able to move their position anymore. Like, they lost their ability to play multiple lanes when they could have used that against lower item totals on G2. And now against in playing one lane, they're just finding it so hard to bulldoze anything. I can understand. Perks is way stronger than you might think. Like, he's only actually 4 items, but, you know, close on the death cap here. Minion waves pushing out decently. 3 inhibitors back up. Whipple's still grouping. I guess he's pushing out a minion wave. He's the only person with TP, so he's not able to play bot lane and just take a free inhibitor, then threaten an end. Like this, at this game state, 41 minutes in. Sorry for the yawning. It's been a long stream already. 41 minutes in. It's remarkable how secure G2 is. Like, it's remarkable how honest this game is. Like, if you look at the map state, they don't have any super minions against them. They don't have a split pusher in the side lane to TP over to Baron, even though he has like a sucky TP in comparison, right? He has GP ult for instant and then can TP in. Like, G2 can leave their base, and they're not afraid of being backdoored like we saw in the Griffin Gen G series and all the other series that have happened. And they're not really afraid. Like, they feel like this game's going to be pretty honest at this point, which is kind of amazing. They've created a map state like that. They've got good spotting wards for anyone trying to come up. There's a diagonal line around the G2 blue buff walking up there. Control ward was put down. Baron dies really fast, as you can see. Perks has already given up on this thing. They've been happy enough to give away the Baron buff here. Like, I think G2 are, you know, in loss minimization territory. This is a good call. They see Zed kiting down, infer it, and they just push through mid lane. This is a good call from Fnatic, trying to catch the enemy out of position. Like, they haven't been trying to make rotational plays. I was already talking about playing multiple lanes. Like, this is a nice little, I guess Kobe would call it translation, because it was a straight line thing. But they don't have waves working with them still, right? But it gets them positioning on Elder. So I think overall this is by far the correct move to make around this objective. This is really sick. So the Realm War play, I don't think we got a replay of this in the live. So the formation here is Broxer at the back. I guess because he's spotting. I think Broxer's just checking this brush to make sure no one's there, right? Never actually answers it, but he's trying to find a super defensive position. He's afraid of caps. The Realm Warp here. This is like unspotted, and it's a sick Realm Warp. It's the duo bot lane Realm Warp. Wanda doesn't take it himself. And now consider this spot where Alistair and flashing Cassio is coming from below you. Caps is coming from above, and Wonder is just like he has been the whole game, from the middle. This is really sick entrance into the fight. Like, this is so next level entrance. That's unbelievable play there. Like, it's so fucking good. Like, this shit is so awesome. Because he's not in vision at the top side here. There's no blue wards around there. Like, they must have an inkling of what's going on, but you just don't put 2 and 2 together in that way. And then they just get wombo comboed. You get wombo comboed by Alistair, Cassio, and Zed on your flanks, man. It's so good, man. It's so good. Ugh. Just beautiful. That's one of those moments where you're like, that needs to be on Reels. It's so good. It's such good synergy being shown. And that's with a sub. Like, they pulled that off with Promiscu on the lineup. Like, you know, they just had trust. The duo, they said, let's go. Like, I haven't heard the comms from that moment. So I don't know if that was Perks saying, like, come on, let's go with Promiscu, or Promiscu just intuiting it. But that was a really, really sick play. Now, a further sick play happens from all this. So this happens, and Hillsong's like, well, I'm leaving. And, like, you know, fair enough. So Hillsong walks up. Remember, he has Baron buff. And he gets to follow the minion wave. And that's really big here. It's like he's following the minion wave. And what's everyone else doing? Because, like, right now, as G2, you're in that Halo moment, right? Like, doesn't matter. Got triple kill. Like, feeling really, really good. Like, this is definitely the, like, cigarette after moment that's going on here. Where you're just like, okay, we killed them really good, and let's chase for more. Maybe we can kill Broxah. So Caps chases. Wonder's kind of ambling. Alistair's kind of going through mid lane. Cassio recalling. That part. Cassio cancels the recall and goes mid lane. Edge of Night up on Caps. Beautiful. Now, let's talk about this battle. Who do you think does more damage at this point with no ultimates? Hillsong or Jankos? Because I have a pretty strong opinion that it's Hillsong. Hillsong is really smart about this decision. Like, he had a lot of recall. I think Rakan does way more damage than Jankos. Like, he's got AP in the build. You know, like, he's got, what, 80 AP from items here? He has very high base AD. A lot of people know that Rakan does a lot of base AD. He has the highest base AD. It's gone through a couple of iterations. Cho'Gath at one point had the highest. And then for a long time, it was maybe Skarner had really high base AD. J4 with Cinderhulk, like, he just does no damage. Like, he gets out-healed by the Q. Like, Hillsong can just Q him as he goes for this. Like, it looks like an epic play, but, like, you know what I mean? Like, he's able to take that all down there. Like, that's really, really smart. Like, what I want people to appreciate is, consider what happened. You just got like space jammed by this combo, and you're just like, well, everyone died. The game could be ending here. Like, watch how this actually goes. Watch Hillsong's role in this. Like, obviously, like everyone else, he finds out really late. He goes over the wall. He tries to come back in, but he can't really get much on. He just flashes over. He's like, I'm not going to die here. I'm going to at least waste time. And then makes the really smart call of, I have Baron buff. The minion wave is crashing. I'm going to go for the backdoor. And just backdooring an inhibitor. Like, he's not going to backdoor into the game. That's just not going to happen. But, like, yes, he does out damage. He does out damage Jankos here. And the shields and stuff are just so funny. But you think you're just wasting some people's time. That's what you assume you're doing in this scenario. Like, the front door from G2 is pushed through. Brox is alive 1v3. Should they have tried to end the game? No, death timer too short on Reckless to make the right call. Good to know. Zed should have recalled as one of the calls. Zed, when does Zed actually pick up on this? It's because Zed's first thought is, I want to kill Karthus. He doesn't get Karthus, and then he walks back. I actually agree with you on this. Like, what is Caps doing after this point? He's trying to escape, I guess, but there's no one to escape from at some point. Like, I guess you could be being chased by no flash Broxah, but, like, probably not, right? So he tries to walk. I think he's just taking blue. Like, honestly, I think he just walks there and he's like, I'm going to get blue buff. I think that's what he's actually doing. Like, yes, to some degree it's Karthus chasing, but I think he's trying to pick up blue buff. And then he's like, wait, we lost inhibitor. It's still a really good call from Hillsong, right? I think he's just trying to get blue buff, and it just ends up like they're really surprised that the minion wave crashed as Hillsong got there and they got everything. So I think he's trying to get blue buff and gets cold to try to help with the kill. And that's my read on what he's trying to do there. Like, you'd have to ask Caps to know for sure, right? But it's like a crazy moment, and there's a lot of basking and afterglow moments in this game where, like, Fnatic at 25 minutes for sure were like, we've done it. Good stuff, guys. And then after that, Teamfighters G2, you're like, we've done it. GG guys. And like neither of those things happen. So it's like insane this game is still giving and giving, right? But now it's a naked Nexus versus 2 Nexus turrets on the side that G2 would have to take down. And that's something we know is going to be relevant. Pushing out of minion waves. Look at the CS numbers here. Like, you're seeing how the CS numbers have gone in this game. In a game where Aurelia had control over Zed, where Cassiopeia was super behind for most of the game because super minions have been pushing into the base. Like, what Bwipo has got way less CS than you could ever imagine. It's 254 and 44 minutes because he was getting screwed in lane and then minions have been pushing away from him. So he got extra screwed, right? Like, he couldn't get the minions, and then in the part of the game where the laning phase ends and he's supposed to get minions, they were so far ahead that he didn't get minions. So that's why he has this hodgepodge 4-item build as GP, the man who subverts gold numbers better than anyone else. Like, it's really, really bad for Bwipo how this game went. Like, I don't even know how many GP ult evolutions he could possibly have. I assume 2, right? He doesn't even have 3 at this point. And people saying, look at Jankos' vision score, he has 135. It's actually not that high. We've seen like pretty insane vision scores in Korea at different times, but you know, it's 100 above his split pushing top laner, so it is funny, right? Any flame horizons that can happen. Is it the Mata horizon when you have 100 vision score above your opponent? That's not what happened in this game, but I just thought of it. Maybe that needs to be a thing. And now we're into silly situation where you're in ultra late game, and what happens here, and no one really knows how to play out this scenario in the game, right? Like, G2 can't just rush down mid lane because they know their inhibitor is down, so they're trying to play respectfully, so that Elder's largest going to be a containment one. Yeah, 20 more vision score, and he has the Mata horizon over Karthus. Bum rush play. Wow, how right you were, Ender. I wonder where his sentence started in his mind. Match of the flippin' century, indeed. Yeah, you just get to a point after a couple of Fnatic's failed pushes where it's almost full item on perks, and Reckless has been overcapped for a while. Full items on a Zed, and you know, Zed with this much pen, like, you're doing true damage to a lot of people, and you're doing close to true damage to everybody. Like Zed can swap his name for one of Karthus. Karthus doesn't have Zonias. Zed can probably force GA out of Aurelia. Maybe not with the right W timing. He kills Rakan and Lucian pretty easily, and he kills GP pretty easily. So yeah, this Zed is relevant again after kind of just running it down for a lot of this game. Now it's all about decisions from here. No one has any ward spots. Only Hillsong has a control ward on his team, and only Promise Q on his team. There's no really egregious items. I think Broxah should probably sell his Darksteel for control ward spot, but you know how things go. Control ward sticking from the side of Fnatic. And the call is, let's all in on this. Like, this is just, they pushed out the wave enough bot lane. They know the other inhibitors are fine. They're just going to lead with their faces. They have no information on Baron HP right now at all. But, you know, if we go to our original assessment of scaling, G2 can definitely win team fights here. And if they get the run warp right, they don't even have to worry about the Requiem on the back end. So the Baron rushes down, and G2 just decide to fight. To some degree. They have to split off here, so this is something that we should talk about on the minimap. Realm Warp is used. They don't get the minions, which I'm sure is something, I know is something they talked about before. They decide not to team fight. They actually go for the Realm Warp play as the Baron is going to be rushed down. So they probably heavily expect to lose Baron at this point. So, double Mountain Drake. Baron goes down to 5 members. G2 Realm Warp 2 people but not minions, so no backdoor advantages to be made. And now your job is to interrupt backs. Bwipo's back, Brox is back, Nemesis is back. They've been stopped. But the ability to use Shirelias here for Hylissang and Reckless is so important, right? Like, when do the minions actually crash? I'm watching the speed here of if the minions are caught up. No, I don't. The minions, I don't think make enough of a difference here. Like, I don't think the minions arriving would actually have changed that. Let's think about the damage speed when the minions show up, because the first auto is that one, right? Where they get huge amount of damage. So this turret will be dead and they'd be started on the second one by now. Still be interrupted by the Aurelia, as we know. They need about 8 autos. Yeah, they wouldn't have got the backdoor there. The backdoor's not actually going to be the difference there. So I don't think the minions actually is the reason they lose. So I'm going to discount that one. I'll read Twitch chat and see if anybody else sees anything there. The big point, of course, is that they're 4 seconds to inhibitor respawning, which is I know is true. I doubt they have an exact inhibitor spawn there, but at the moment this happens, right? The moment that this process happens with the Realm Warp, which is what, like now? Like, the game has to play itself out. So, Fnatic rush down Baron, and they know G2 want to stop them. So, that's why you go over the wall. There was no ultimate on... Yenko's used the ultimate here, right? EQ down, flash down, and then Reckless and Hylissang start running towards the base. They've lost the game here because they don't have Baron recalls. They don't have a way to catch 2 people. And clearly we can see the speed is not fast enough on the ending here. By the way, it really heads up to the EU LEC production for putting up the spider cam, you know, the lane swap, like mirrored nexus, like kind of speed check on which of the game finishes happens first. It's not a trivial thing to have that up there. But yeah, the backdoor bonus is not the thing here. You're right, and I think any G2 fan who's like, it's so unlucky that it was 4 seconds away from the inhibitor respawning is true. But at the end of the day, like, it kind of plays itself out the moment that Realm Warp is chosen. So nice stuff with the base race cam. The question is, like, if you're G2... I talk about the map state as this happens. You got to push down bot lane. So Wander can't group. Remember this point in the game. Wander can't group. He has to push out a further minion wave. Otherwise, any extended contest happens and the minions cause too much trouble. So he's trying to do that. So then he teleports in late. So that means that they don't have their most fed member. So they can't face check any faster than they do. And if Wander comes in there, like he's about where Jankos' position is and he doesn't get to the Baron. So... there's no point for him to try to group there. They can fully give up the Baron, but then Fnatic, if they finally play the lanes properly, they crash in the minion waves at the same time, all the buffs are there, I think you still lose the game. And then I think it just becomes a tale of the tape of, okay, PapaSmithy, well, what did happen? Well, they move in there, Shirelia's in, they get the autos down, and yeah, the game ends, right? Like, I want to say something more sexy, but I think the big call here is... the game plays itself out, and Fnatic having control over the Baron pit is the difference here because it forces G2 into a reactionary teleport, into a half contest, half don't contest. Yeah, it was a really awesome moment, right? It's like a super hype moment, but I don't think there's any way that can go on here. So let's look at some other scenarios people are talking about. Maybe G2 could have gambled on finding this in the pit, says Meridian 36. They don't get to the pit, so it doesn't happen. What if they back there? I think they just get split to death. Yes, in hindsight, there's more of a chance they win that way, but you can't know that running the play, right? What if Caps went with Perks and Wonder? Let's go back to that. What if Caps went with Perks and Wonder? Let's see what Caps achieves. He comes in. He's trying to interrupt backs. I think they stop less backs, and it probably goes similar. Because remember, you're fighting. You can clear those minions, and then that turret is super. Like if a second person is there to clear that minion, this turret doesn't explode as fast. Again, it's hard to say, but I can't say that's the wrong decision either. What if Ali recalled right away instead of cancelling Bwipo's recall? He still gets in too late. They don't have the Baron, so they can't get there fast enough to that to matter. The Australia's won the game. I mean, Barbushia, like, they get 3 or 4 autos because of Australia's. I think you might be right on that. Like, it would have been even closer. This would have been like Fnatic, KTIG levels of close game 3 of that series, if not for Australia's. I agree. I didn't see the voice comms. No, I'll watch that after the stream. What if all G2 members run for the enemy Nexus? It's a 5v5, and they lose to Baron buff. What if Wonder ults to chase Fnatic and prevents the backdoor? I think a blind Realm Warp there, like, you'd need to send 4 or 5 people in to the Baron. And it could still end the same way. I think you still lose the Baron, so I think the Realm Warp there is too hard. What if Wonder TP in earlier for the Baron contest? He was trying to get the side minion wave in order. There's a chance if we slow it down, like, he doesn't get as much pushing as he wants done, but if it goes longer, if there's a standoff, then the side minions really screw them, so I don't mind that. I think Wonder's TP was a big mistake, and the best chance of winning that game was realizing a mistake and calling it. I think it's really hard to say on that one. Yeah, those are some of the scenarios there, but I think in hindsight, like Fnatic is so far ahead in this game, and G2 makes some smart moves for sure. I really liked the Baron they got, the second last Baron, I guess. Like, that was a move that a lot of my Korean teams wouldn't make, and I think the Korean teams would have lost a lot more wimpishly. And that's not to call them, that's not to, like, use the insulting times of wimp, but I mean, like, going out without a fight is always a bit. I never like to see people just watch as 3 inhibitors die. Like, they had 1 inhibitor down, and like Baron minions come in, they have 3 inhibitors down, and then like 1 guy initiates and dies, and then 4 people live, and their KDA is better, and the game ends. Like, I'm not a fan of teams losing that way. Like, I'm much more about rolling the dice on something that could lead to a victory, and I think G2 did that, so credit to them. I think G2's early game was pretty damn bad. There was a lot of obvious problems with the 2v2 laning phase for Perks. And Caps was like kind of like hide and go seek a bit too much. But Wonder played this game. Like, Wonder had one of the best performances in a loss that I've seen in years. Like, this is the game where everyone's like, why can't I vote for the person on the losing team? And you're right on that. Like, Wonder had an amazing game here. And he even showed mechanics that we hadn't seen played in a pro game. Like, I'm sure a Realm Warp has dodged a Karthus ult at some point, but there's been what, like, not that many Karthus games and Rise games in the years, mostly because Karthus only came in this year. And when Rise and Karthus were both meta champions, Rise had a different ult. So he actually, he's popularized now an escape. He can even name it, like at this point, like just like Insect was not categorically the first person to kick Flash, Insect kick, like he popularized it. Like, Wonder can do it here. The Deficio escape was the Stasis Realm Warp, so is it the Wonder escape now? I don't know. I think we should defer to him, but... So from 1 to 10, how big of a fiesta was it? I think it's remarkable that Fnatic found it so tricky to find different approaches to ending the game. 'Cause, like, they had the power to kill the game, and then kind of meander. Like, it went out with a whimper almost, like when they had 2 inhibitors and 3 inhibitors, and then as people were saying, like, how did they find all this experience? Well, they just didn't find a way to end it. Like, yes, they didn't have the easiest siege, Lucian and things like that, but they could have been better about how they played out the map than they were. So to that side, just the mere essence of it going so much longer than it should have is a fiesta to some degree. But I think there was some smart calls made as a game. Like, there weren't a lot of mistakes made post, like, 35 minutes. Like, the first 25, like, G2 is, like, in the ground, and Fnatic is just, like, flexing on them, basically. And then at a point, G2 and Fnatic are both doing pretty good stuff, but Fnatic's a little bit out of, a little bit out of inspiration on how to close the game. And then there's some, like, actually pretty hype moments towards the end, and I have no problem with how it ended. Like, I think Fiesta's a little bit unfair for this game. But I feel like it was, like, it's a very interesting VOD review from Fnatic. I'd love to be a fly on the wall for the Fnatic VOD review of, like, how, hey guys, like, what could we have done here? What should we have done here? And just to hear all the different perspectives on what could have happened. So that will end the VOD review of Fnatic versus G2. Really fun game to watch. I did enjoy it. I feel like it stood up maybe better than my first expectation in terms of how it played out. But the first 25 minutes was like pretty scary stuff from Fnatic. I want to see first 25 Fnatic versus first 25 Origin. I think that'll be really interesting to watch. But a lot for Fnatic to return to. And G2 showed a lot of grit, and with nothing on the line, was surprisingly robust. And for a team that could have gone the way of Immortals and been regular season wonders and then, just petered out in a best of 5, the amount of grit G2 showed with nothing to play for here, I think serves their fans very well when it comes to what do I learn and take away from this series. Because this could have just been a Fiesta game with all troll picks and nothing was learned or taken away. But now G2 fans are like, wow, my team fought back well, and we even think more of Wonder right now. Like, for a game that should mean very little, it's both a hype game that so many people identified with, and also a game that I think both teams can learn a lot from. Like Fnatic on strong early game into some macro issues closing, and G2 on the worst possible early game into some pretty good resilience, which is an important thing.